So I'd like to introduce my teaching partner as our first speaker about what Rise Up means to her. Chris.
I've been a member for of this fellowship for over 23 years. Robin and I have been facilitating the Rise Up curriculum for over 20 years. My first experience with Rise Up was as a student. I was interested in anything that taught me more about human nature. Religion was a subject that caught my attention. None of my college classes approached the subject in an experiential way. I was more than willing to dive into that new information. The first session we learned about Lilith, the first wife of Adam. Her story was present in Babylonia, the Torah, and Jewish folklore. I loved that I was hearing stories that had been passed down by members of the human family for thousands of years. That first evening reminded me that cultures around the world have so many ways of expressing themselves, like how we live on this earth, how we connect with each other, and especially how we help ourselves to grasp what we feel are deeper, authentic feelings. Rise Up is a curriculum whose goal is to encourage its students to participate in activities consisting of art, dance, singing, discussion, and more that spiritually and emotionally are representative of elements of the cultures being visited. The word ritual comes from the Latin ritus, and the Greek rio means to flow or stream. Rise Up is a unique experience that gives opportunities to learn about other cultures and about ourselves through participating in a number of activities in a group context. One of our first rituals was simply to pour water from a pitcher into a bowl and say our name and tell something about ourselves. CVUUF acknowledges joys and sorrows every Sunday. The importance of pouring water in a bowl, dropping stones into water, these activities are all around us and can be very powerful. Robin and I have the honor of offering the curriculum to anyone. Like the rest of the group, we connect and reconnect with the activities offered in the class. For example, we journal at the end of each session. The words that I put down on paper touch me in that moment, and they reawaken me when I read them again. I feel they support the evolution of my thoughts as I move through my days. I'm going to read to you the welcome written by Elizabeth Fisher for the Rise Up Sourcebook. You are about to embark on a metaphysical journey. Consider for a moment what this can mean to you. Learning to appreciate what other people believe, especially if such a study is undertaken deliberately and with respect, can be a profound experience. It can enrich your intellectual, emotional, and psychological life, as well as aid you in defining your own philosophical, ethical, and spiritual understandings. This imaginary journey has the potential of being more challenging and meaningful than some of the physical ones you may have undertaken. My hope is Rise Up and Call Her Name, a woman-honoring journey into earth-based spirituality, will be such an experience for you. And I realized at the end of this last class that I had been so reconnected to the increasing, bringing in power and energy from around myself, that I am moving ahead to create a sculpture that to me pictures the Shinto religion, and that's what I'm looking forward to in the near future. Thank you.
So over the many years we've been offering Rise Up, we always open it up to both women and men. And for some reason, this is the first time we've had men join our class. We're pleased and excited to have these guys join us, and I'm happy to introduce our next speaker, my sweetheart, Tom Stow, and what Rise Up can mean to men.
Good morning, everyone, and perhaps not to all men in general, but at least to this one in particular. At least I'll speak to that. A bit of background for those who may not know: when Robin and I met over 20 years ago, earth-based spirituality was one of the many things that brought us together. She participated in women-only pagan rituals, and I attended men-only gatherings that were frequently Native American inspired. As our beliefs and practices evolved, I started attending co-ed rituals based in many cases on the readings and songs we've been hearing this morning. I admit it felt like I was intruding on a private women's space, and I suppose that was true at first. However, I soon came to understand the vital importance of female-centered as well as earth-centered philosophy. And that was long before our current situation in the world, which is, how shall I put this, even less receptive than the world of the 1990s and 2000s to such spiritual leanings. Over time, I've come to cherish these ritual elements and the spirituality they represent, just as many of the people in this room, myself included, cherish UU hymnody, prose, and poetry. When Robin asked me to attend the spring 2018 offering of Rise Up, taught by her and Chris, I wasn't sure I had the time with work and other obligations. I'm very glad I did, for two reasons. Number one, I learned the stories of female deities from around the world. Anthropology fascinates me, so this was worthwhile on its own. Even more, I now understand not only where all the stories and music came from that I learned years before and had sung in all those rituals, but also where they fit in the context of the Rise Up curriculum. Which brings me to reason number two, and the far more important one. I now get how important it is for everyone, of whatever gender, race, or social class, to hear the timeless messages of faith, personal strength, and perseverance in adversity from all of these goddesses. Their voices and visions are essential if we are to overcome the latest affronts to our collective human dignity and well-being, as well as to the health of the earth and all of her inhabitants. Thank you for your time today, and blessed be.
Every time we offer Rise Up, we have the pleasure of welcoming many people who are not members of our fellowship. Our next speaker is someone who calls herself a family witch. I love that name. And having come from a long line of powerful women. She even has family witch on her license plate on her car, which is so cool. Welcome, Jane Wolfe.
Good morning. I first heard about this class when my friend Jenny took it many years ago. I knew back then that this was a class that I needed to be a part of one day. It took many years, but the timing was perfect for my journey to begin this past February. It's hard to put into words how this class inspired and changed me. As I learned about the goddess traditions throughout the ages in the world, I was struck by the realization of the continuing struggle to embrace the feminine in our lives when we are surrounded by a masculine-dominated society. Women have been pushed down throughout history, and the challenge to hold on to the goddess has been going on for centuries. I heard the stories of how the goddess was honored, but then erased from cultures. But if you look really closely, she was really never erased, just hidden in plain sight. And sometimes, in bold ways, not hidden at all. If you look around in nature, you'll always see feminine and masculine in harmony. I was lucky enough to be in a Rise Up class with both men and women. As we heard the stories about the different goddesses and shared with each other how these stories made us feel, I got to hear a man's perspective of the goddess, something that was very new to me. This sharing seemed to allow them to find the feminine energy within themselves, and while being supported by the whole group, they were able to share that comfortably. This sharing also allowed me to let down my guard and embrace my own power, both feminine and masculine, and in doing so, I felt the group's support. I experienced stepping out of my comfort zone by reading out loud, stepping in front of a group of people, singing, dancing, drawing, sculpting, learning the art of storytelling, and sharing my feelings in a large group. All these things I thought I could never do. I was challenged to look at myself in a mirror, see my true self, and find my own internal strength. By going for it, I learned how letting go and just being can be freeing and fulfilling. Within this class, I was able to find my own strength as a woman and transform myself into the person I wanted to be. I embraced who I am, what my talents are, and began my own business to live the life that I've always wanted to live. I can rise up and be an example of a strong woman and carry on the stories of the past while creating my own story. Thank you.
Our next speaker, Jenny Buchanan, is not here. She was on vacation and her plane was delayed, but she has given us permission to share her words, and Chris is going to read them today. Jenny is one that's not a member of our fellowship, but has come back numerous times to take Rise Up because you learn something new about yourself every single time.
I do wish that Jenny was here to give you her own words, and I'll do my best. As a pagan, one of the most meaningful symbols to me is a spiral. That symbol, which represents the cycles of our lives and the idea that things happen over and over again, slightly different every time. We have the cycle of the seasons in the year, the cycle of the moon, even the cycle of the day. And for me, the cycle of Rise Up class, which I have taken 3 times in the past 18 years, getting something new and wonderful from it each time. The first time I took Rise Up, it was all about discovery. I was in my early 20s, newly married with a brand new baby. I had been raised Lutheran myself, but had fallen away from that in my teens. I had only recently discovered paganism and realized that's what I was. Introducing myself that first night as Jenny, daughter of Lori, granddaughter of Marion, was powerful. After that, each class gave me a new look into woman-honoring cultures, goddesses who gave an alternative to the male deity, I had grown up, the male deity I had grown up with, and new traditions to share with my young daughter. I can honestly say that Rise Up has changed my kids' lives. The second cycle in my Rise Up spiral was about digging deeper. I had begun a Spiral Scouts group for my now 2 daughters to meet other kids. And from that began to form a small, a small circle of pagan families to celebrate the holidays, teach our children, and establish our own traditions together. Rise Up inspired me with ritual ideas, goddesses to share and honor, and a way to celebrate the cycles of our lives. It helped me form our small pagan family circle and community, which is still a huge part of my life and extended family today. The third cycle in my Rise Up spiral came at a time of significant change in my life. A child graduating and moving on to college, a new job for me, changing ideas about our government here in the US, and by extension, the way we live our lives. This most recent Rise Up class was a touchstone and a reminder for me during a time of upheaval. It reminded me there has never been just one way to live our lives. Each path is a spiral with layer upon layer of opportunities and deeper meaning if we only care to look. It reminded me of my female ancestors and my women-honoring roots. It gave me hope that even in this frightening political cycle, there is still a culture of respect and respect out there for my daughters. And it has inspired me to return to the beginnings of my own spiritual journey for a new spiral of discovery and dedication. That's it.
Jenny didn't tell you that her 18-year-old daughter joined us for this last Rise Up class, and that was really, really special. There is so much that Rise Up has to offer. We've only touched on a small part. I hope you will take something away that will guide you on your journey.